Never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut.
In smoky rooms where deals are made, loyalty the ace he's played. A friend of ours, he'll stand up tall. Through gunfire smoke, he'll never fall. With heart of gold and steel resolve, a mystery we'll never solve.
Brothers and sisters, welcome back. Welcome back to the Friend of Ours podcast. This is a limited edition series hosted by your main man, Duke Loves Rasslin. And of course, one of the legends in the ring, one of the legends in the street, the one, the only, Mr. Big Vito LoGrasso. How you doing there, Vito?
I'm doing fine. I just want to say hello, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year to all of our listeners, all our fans, Duke and his family. I just got to say that I am so appreciative of all the listeners that we have had through this short series that we've been doing, which is going to continue into probably one of the longest series we've ever seen in podcasting. Duke, how do you feel about that?
I feel great about it. I'm telling you right now, it is amazing the fact that we keep building this community. It's clear that the content, the stuff that we're talking about is something that people are hungry for. They can't get enough of it. And certainly not only are we going to give you more folks, we're going to ramp it up. We've been taking it easy on you thus far, but we're going to get into some very serious content starting with this episode and beyond. So strap up because it's going to be a ride. First of all, we know that you're the Don of wrestling, Vito. But what's this about you being the Don of making homemade pizzas? What's going on over there at the Casa de la LoGrasso over there?
Well, as everybody knows, my father was a gourmet chef. I grew up in a restaurant business, and I have taken my cooking to another level. I actually enjoy cooking. It was something that I wasn't involved with for many many years because it wasn't. Let's put this. I wasn't housebroken. I wasn't. I wasn't a homebody. I was so used to eating tuna out of a can, vegetables out of a can, turkey on the go, protein shake, protein bar. But then, once I settled into it, more of a normal lifestyle of like being a family man, I took up cooking, and the pizzas have been coming out from scratch with dough and fresh mutz sauce, um, putting a little al dente in my recipes, so to say, and between the family, my wife especially, and a bunch of other people have become interested from my posting pictures online and social media with the Big Vito brand on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Twitter or X. It has become a revolutionized industry where, like, Jenko oil might be something, but Big Vito pizza could be something else.
Tell me about the mushroom pizza because I hear this was the big thing here.
The mushroom pizza is a favorite of the family, and when people are hungry, I don't mind going to work in the kitchen, and everybody loves pizza. So I go and I put it together for Miss Noel and for the kids who are here for the holidays and anybody who comes and they're hungry. I don't mind going in the kitchen and making pizza for everybody, and everybody loves it. Comes out great. You see the pictures online for what I'm doing, so something's right. And the secret is you got to turn the pie. You can't just let it sit in one place. You got to turn the pie.
All right, so I want to get even more specific with this because first and foremost, are you using canned mushrooms or are you using fresh mushrooms?
Now, the canned mushrooms, we buy organic. A lot of our stuff is organic. So, and everybody knows that's a more healthier lifestyle to eat organic things. It doesn't have the preservatives and all the other stuff that's in it. But guys, when you're talking about adding spinach and olives and mushrooms, uh, doing your chicken pizza, uh, adding, sausage. I haven't done meatballs yet. I'm gonna try an eggplant pizza, which I'm looking forward to trying. Uh, it's just something like, like you just you put it together, you come up with some recipes on the fly, and it's all about taste. And it's never a measure of measurements. It's an eye thing of fingertips and look to know how exactly to do it and what exactly to put in it. So I mean, guys, like anybody out there, and this goes for really, reality, you can become a pizza great if you have the patience, the right ingredients, and learn how to make a quality pizza at home.
Incredible, incredible stuff there. Who knows, folks? We might get this Big Beetle Pizza, the Don Pizza, going here because this guy has some secrets under his sleeve, so to speak. I love it.
Duke, what's funny, Duke? And I know you would be interested in this because, like, you being from where you are in Boston, you are around a lot of fine restaurants and pizza places, especially in Italian neighborhoods. And you yourself have eaten a lot of great Italian delicacies, and you know the different tastes, the different looks of things, and you know what looks good, what looks bad, what's raw, what's cooked correctly. I mean, Duke, you can be an entrepreneur because your family is from that surrounding yourself. So you can compare what I'm speaking about out of your own legacy of being, and I'm not saying this in a joking way, but you being brought up in an Italian heritage and you being brought up, with some Italian customs.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you know that I'm a big food guy. So absolutely, the whole notion of being able to compare and know what's good and what's right, learning about real Italian home cooking, so I understand what it's supposed to taste like. So when I go out to a nice restaurant, listen, I said it before, Davio's. In fact, you guys should be a sponsor of this show, Davio's. It's my favorite Northern Italian steakhouse. They have all the fixings, all the classics that they do. I love the friggin' place because it really reminds me of back in the day in East Boston, hanging out with my Italian family over there and just having the real home cooking. So I agree. Yeah. You can make it and I'll eat it and I'll let the world know how great it is. How about that?
When you're cooking, okay, and this is for the people who cook Italian who want that, al dente, really great Italian look and drinking wine while you're cooking and having the ingredients. But you know, sometimes you don't have to overdo it with garlic. You could use garlic powder. If you're cooking spinach, like fresh spinach out of a package, like organic spinach, and you saute it with a little olive oil and some garlic powder, you don't have to overcook it in garlic to get it to have that taste. Another thing too is, a lot of people use salt in their food, but did anybody ever think about using onion powder or garlic powder to compensate for the using less salt in your diet? This is something that's a great health tip. This is something that gives it that Italian flavor. And if you do it the right way, you can have the best of both worlds.
Great point. Great. Because, here's the thing. Once you start adding the cheese and other things and what have you, that has more than enough salt in it. So you don't necessarily need to add extra salt while you're cooking, especially when you're cooking traditional Italian foods. That's a great call out there, Vito. Great call out.
Here's another thing that I started doing, Duke, and I know you would appreciate this. Everybody likes cheese on their pizza, right? So of course you get the shredded cheese, already made up in a package. But on this particular pizza that I made last night, I used mozzarella. Actually bought a mozzarella sliced in a package, and I put that on the pizza along with the mozzarella and the mushrooms. And let me tell you something. The picture of it was something. The taste of it was something else.
Wow. You're getting me hungry here, brother. What's going on here?
Another thing too, guys, and if you use your Italian seasoning along with, either you're going to have marinara sauce or tomato and basil sauce. Of course, it goes with your preference. Always add the Italian seasoning because it gives it a little extra, get a little extra flavor, a little extra real life pizzeria taste.
I'm telling you, we're getting all the secrets here, folks. We're getting all, it's interesting though, because you said your dad was a gourmet chef. And thinking back, you talk a lot about your mom. I never knew that about your dad, Vito. So talk to us about it. Talk to us about your dad and even his brothers and what have you. What kind of thing did these guys have going on, especially growing up when they did around New York, the '60s, the '70s, the '80s, what have you? Talk to me about these guys. Your dad, his brothers, the whole nine yards.
Well, my father came from a town in Italy called Terracina. It was a fish town, and my father came over, and they had eight brothers. So one brother was in the Italian army. My father was the oldest. My uncle Tony was second. Uncle Ross, and so on and so forth. My father came to America. Um, Came through Ellis Island, just like my uncle, Lucky Luciano. So when you talk about family history, a good portion of my family came through Ellis Island. So when they came, they tried to establish themselves, with jobs and doing things. And when my father met my mother being Lucky Luciano's niece, um, was in a peculiar place because her stepfather was also connected, and it was him gave my father a longshoreman's job on the docks. Now, when you get a longshoreman's job back then, that was like gold. That was like Union 101. You just, you were locked in. So my father worked on the docks, and then he was also a cook. But then he opened up, a pizzeria, and he went into business for himself. He was partners with his brother, my uncle Tony, and um, they opened up a pizzeria. From there, they went opened up Joe DiMaggio's restaurant in Flushing, Queens, which was owned by Joe DiMaggio, the baseball player. Now, the history of my mom when it comes to, you know, keeping being the glue of the family. My mother was also an established cook. She can cook with the best of them. She had all the Italian heritage recipes from her mother passed down. And when there was a throwdown or when there was a holiday meal or something to where there was cooking going on, in my house, it was chicken cutlets or it was sauce on Sunday with pork, your meatballs, your sausage, spaghetti, and that's how we grew up. Italian bread, the whole nine yards, guys. I mean, it was quite the experience, and for all the people who got to live this way, having um, steak or breaded veal in the broiler is something I'll never forget. And they still cook it in Gloucester because that's where the rest of my family lives now. They reside in Boston, up by you. And Gloucester is a fish town, and they have a lot of Italian heritage. It's mostly predominantly Italian, and they still cook the same ways. And my brother says, Vito, if you ever went up there, he says you'd eat like you did when you were a kid. And do I miss it immensely, immensely? But getting back to my brothers, my father, and my brothers, my father and his brothers, they came here, they established themselves, and being in the lifestyle of Italian and hanging out on 18th Avenue, Cafe Italia, Cafe Milalucci. Um, you get to meet people, be involved with uh, certain things that go on in the streets, and you make your way. Being that everybody was from Italy, they all had a understanding of who's who and getting together and who belongs with whose family. So my father, belonged to one of the families, and he was connected along with my grandfather, who was also connected, my uncle Luciano, who was connected. So I grew up in a family who was, mob connected. Now, when people talk about being connected, how far does it run? How deep does it go? Well, one of my uncles was um, asked to do a job for somebody. The job didn't go as planned. My uncle was on the run. He still walked the streets. He really didn't give a shit. And he was killed mob style in front of um, Cafe Milalucci or Cafe Italia in front of a funeral home, shotgun. His friend called him over to the car, and that was it. My father and my uncle went to Cafe Milalucci the next day. I was a kid and I was in the car with them. They went in, and guys, I was a kid, so I know that from what I heard, they went there to get money, and then we had the funeral for my uncle, and you know it is said my father took care of business. What that means is when you're the head of the family, or if it's one of your brothers, you never let them go down if somebody does something to you, or my brothers, I'm going to get you. My father took care of business, just like I would do for my brothers. And I think anybody out there would do for their siblings or brothers. But when it comes to that kind of business, it doesn't go undone. I have another uncle on my mother's side who was my uncle Eddie, who was also killed on 18th Avenue. And this was a fight that was in Leo's bar. And this was right before I graduated high school. And it was three against one. My uncle was, he could handle himself. There was no question. But when they took out the guns and they shot him down, that was something. I wound up, I wasn't going to go to graduation. My grandfather at the time was terminally ill with cancer. So once he was down and my uncle passed away, it was pretty heartfelt because I graduated high school. Um, I had a death in the family. I never really got to experience the greatness of me graduating, but you understand that comes with the lifestyle of being, related. And, it was kind of tough. My mother was heartbroken. And then 10 days later, my grandfather passed away. So, Duke, I mean, that's a lot right there to take in, for a family, Italian heritage, Italian customs, the Italian way of living, but it's a lifestyle. It's not just a gimmick.
What happens when you know a family member has been whacked and you still got to live where you got to live? You still got to walk the same streets, go to the same grocery stores, go to the same dry cleaner. You still got to see the people who, one way or another, are responsible for that family member no longer being there. How do you manage that? I'm not saying you personally, I'm speaking in general. How does a family, how do people, how do men, young men, manage that?
Well, Duke, I mean, it is an unwritten law that what happens on the street, you can't just go out and, the famous saying, you can't just go out and whack a made guy. You got to do it with the permission, and you have to do it with a sit down to see what was the cause of this, who did it, why they do it. It's not just cut and dry. But when you know the people who did it, they know that you know, and they're more scared of you because you're walking around and they know that you want revenge. Me being a kid, you know, I knew where they were. I knew the bar they were in. I knew who they were. But to go in there, like a cowboy as a teenager, that wasn't going to happen. That probably would have caused more problems. And I was told to stay away, do not go there several times for both, and I was warned, don't go there. And as much as it took me not to go there, I mean, I abided by the family rules and listened to the family, and if I would have did something to justify the death, could have made things worse. I don't think it would have made things better, but it would have made things worse. And then I would have been the one to maybe have to go to Italy or have to go somewhere. I'll give you another instance. Okay. Uh, my brother was involved in something, and something went down in Brooklyn, and he had to go away to Italy for about 6 months.
So going to Italy, are you even safe when you go to Italy, or you still got to be worried that something could happen there?
You're safe when you go to Italy because they put you in a place where you're safe. It's like a safety house. So you're in the country, nobody really knows where you are. If they do find you, it's a lucky shot, but you're always with somebody. And when you talk about guys going away or guys being protected when they have to leave the country, you know you're on serious grounds to be whacked, terminated. Uh, you're in danger. Your family becomes in danger. But if you have people on the inside, like my father was, who protected my brother, and then here's me, and then if I would have knew at the time what exactly was going on or who did it, everybody in Brooklyn knew, in Staten Island, I was just a crazy off the wall son of a bitch, and I would have went and did it myself.
Wow. We've heard you talk about Lucky Luciano, and there was a lot to unpack
Right.
as it relates to him and your relation to him. And certainly, folks, we're going to be stretching that out over the next couple of episodes because there's a lot to unpack. Lucky Luciano, legitimately one of the most famous names that you've ever heard of that was connected to the lifestyle, and there's a lot to be said, and to hear directly from somebody who's part of that bloodline break things down. I mean, what a treat this is. But before we even delve into Lucky at all, there's another major figure who was a boss as well, who you're related to on the other side of the family. Who is that person, and how are you related to them?
I had third cousins with Paul Castellano, and he was the head of the mob family before John Gotti. Um, my grandfather worked for him. It's like I said, as a kid, I hung out in Studio 64. I got into all the mob clubs. I used to go to discotheques. And people know once I mention my grandfather's name, I got in places, I got to do things, I hung out with certain wise guys. And this is not something I made public back then because I was a kid, but something that truly, when you look at Saturday Night Fever and you look at all these things from back then, it was real to me and it was a lifestyle to me. And I really did live it. You run the streets and you hang in with a certain crew. I was friends with my friend Jimmy Bellotti, and he's related to Tommy Bellotti, who was killed along with Paul Castellano. And it was alleged that John Gotti did the killing, and I became good friends with Jimmy Bellotti. and we hung together. We did jobs together, and there were a few guys back then who I used to run with, and do things with, but always kept it under, you did things, but you kept it under wraps. You kept cool. You didn't go crazy, but people knew who you were. And people knew you could handle yourself. So it was known. And if I ever wanted to take a further step, the opportunity was always there, but I never did.
Castellano, he was a major figure. He was a major boss, and as you stated, it's believed that John Gotti and his crew were responsible for that hit, and they did not have permission to do the hit. So this was something that was a huge deal back then. Um, in fact, Vinny the Chin Gigante, who was the boss of the Genovese family, he was completely pissed off that not only did John Gotti whack Castellano, but then he became, the leader of the boss of that family afterwards. So it's like he knocked the guy off so he could take over. So Vinny the Chin, he set up a car bomb that was supposed to be for Gotti, ended up taking somebody else out. But this was a war basically that was going on over this. So I know you were a young guy at the time, but what was that like just being alive and being related and being friends with some of these guys? And you got all of this, you know what I mean, jockeying for position, people wanting to take over the family, people wanting revenge for people getting whacked. To be alive and to be around and to be there at ground zero as all this stuff is happening. I mean, what was that like, bro?
You just knew where to stand your ground, and you knew who to mess with and who not to mess with, and you kind of knew who was who. But the one thing that used to drive me crazy, and I used to crack somebody when they used to say this to me, and my brother would probably laugh. Do you know who I am? Crack. I really don't give a fucking shit. I can make a phone call. Crack. Go ahead, make your fucking phone call now. Go ahead. You want me to dial the number for you? I'll have guys here in a little bit. Crack. Go fuck yourself. Now what? Now that you got your ass kicked in front of everybody, and now you're gonna make a fucking phone call for what? What are you gonna do now? It wasn't like I never, hit somebody before because they were a jerk off. It's just the fact that you want to fucking say this so you could be a big guy, but then in reality, you know, you got no fucking balls. You're living on somebody else's reputation. And do you know who I am? No, I don't. If I knew who you were, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But because you want to pull out your phone, want me to make a phone call? Crack. Now make your fucking phone call. So, I mean, that's the way it used to be. And when you used to have to be, lay into people, I fucking got heavy with people. And when I used to have to kick somebody's face in, I kicked somebody's face in. When it came time to go and do certain things, do certain jobs, I friggin' did it. When it came time to protecting your family, say, I'm going to throw you off the sixth fucking floor of this building. I really don't give a shit. Or I'm going to stick your head through the second floor window because you were fucking with my family. How about that? Or I'm just going to give you an open hand crack because you're a fucking idiot and don't talk to me like that.
Wow. In the case of John Gotti, he got arrested by the FBI and he got sent away not long after this. Do you think he would have had the same fate as Castellano had it not been for him getting arrested?
I think he was more aware. I mean, they did try to kill Gotti.
Yeah, they did the car bomb. I'm sure they did other things too, but the car bomb was the more famous one.
Would he have been assassinated? I don't think so because he was smarter than that. He was always had a crew around him. He was well protected, and it would have had to been a major, major setup to where he was like not looking. He was always looking. You always know where you are. You always know your surroundings. And when you're that guy, you know You really truly have no friends because anybody could turn on you at any given moment, and I know everybody uses the words rats and, you know, stoolies, or they're under investigation, or they're working for the FBI and they're looking to get off. But, when it comes down to it, you really can't trust anybody, and everybody wants to be the top guy. But does anybody want to take the chance and miss?
Wow, powerful, powerful statement there. Does it surprise you, Vito, that a lot of these guys ended up turning out to be informants and stoolies and what have you? I mean, you have all of these rules, you have all of these customs and what have you that held up for so long. And then it seems like once we hit the 80s and the 90s, guys turned state witness pretty quick. Does that surprise you looking back on it?
It does, because like it was La Casa Nostra. It's a family. There's a code. It's not just something that you take up or you're doing. It's a brotherhood. It's supposed to be that. But people, look at John Gotti. They say he's the Teflon Don. He's in the papers, and everybody's seen the movies and what he was about, right? But he stood up for who he was. He showed up every day, never ducked nobody. And when they took him in, he went in with his head held high. I respect the hell out of that. And he never looked to cop a plea. He never looked to take the easy way out. Hey, I'm John Guy. I'm Vito LoGrasso. I'm here. All right. You don't fucking like me? Tough shit. You're gonna try to do something? Go right the fuck ahead. I really don't care. That's John Gotti's mentality, you know. And when he had to show up or he had to back somebody up, he came. He backed them up in triplicate. It's just like me when a friend of mine named Anthony Capo, and this guy, he was related to somebody, and he was involved in the pizza connection, and he did some things, and they gave him a little piece of territory. And he was a buddy of mine. Vito, I need you. I said, where are we going? He says, I got to take care of something. He said, bring your bat. I'm like, oh man. I said, oh, this is going to be bad. So I asked him what happened. He says, well, he said, this guy at the lumberyard fired my brother. He said, he had no right to fire my brother, so he got nasty to him. He fucking talked shit. Now we're going to go straighten it out. I said, but Anthony, we've got softballs, 6:15. He said, we'll be done. If anything happens, we'll be all right. I was like, all right. We take a ride. I walk in there with him, and there's four guys standing there. He walks in. They all freaking get up. Well, I'm standing at the door with a bat, and a couple of guys recognize me. So I'm standing there with the bat. He goes nose to nose with the guy. He's got a slapjack in his friggin' pocket, ready to crack him. And it got intense, and I'm ready to swing. You know what I mean? And just and go balls out. Thank God it ended up in got his job back. Everything was settled. But that's some of the things that you had to do to protect your territory. Rep yourself, and you handle your business. You know what I mean? And there's some other guys, who I went with as a second in command, to make sure things went okay. And when I showed up, and they saw me as the backup, I'm not saying I'm the toughest guy or the roughest guy, but when it came to handling business on the street, I handle my business.
I had an interesting conversation with a guy who was in a different. Correct. I can say their name because I think some of this stuff was actually on this show, revealed on Duke Loves Rasslin at least. A guy who used to be in the Latin Kings, and he was explaining to me that through boxing, he was able to get a lot of the younger guys who were being earmarked to be part of the Kings and put in work and what have you. He was getting them into boxing, so they had another way to make money, to try to legitimize the organization, what have you. And he got a lot of guys off the street and into doing that legitimate type of work, so to speak. But one of the things I always wondered was, did the organization at any point try to extort these guys? Because it's like, okay, you're a big time boxer, you're making enough money to put food on the table, what have you. Where's my taste? Where's my cut? Because we're allowing you to not have to be in the lifestyle the way other people have to be. We're allowing you to do this legitimate thing, but there's got to be a price for that. You as a guy who eventually went into entertainment, pro wrestling, acting, was there ever a time where anyone tried to hold you up and say, "Hey, you got to give us a taste of whatever you're making"? Uh, Especially since you're somebody who's supposed to be in a lifestyle. This is what you grew up in, and what have you. We're letting you go do this other thing, and you get to walk around scot free. You got to kick back something in order to do that. Did anyone ever approach you and try to impose those restrictions on you at all?
Never at all, because the wrestling game was never a part of. I never made it a part of things I did on the outside, and the people who were in the lifestyle really didn't know the wrestling game. Now, are you asking me if I didn't have somebody speak to somebody about getting me a job in the WWE back in the day? Was there a conversation? Yeah, there was a conversation. How far it went, I don't know, but it never happened. But they would ask me, how come you're not doing this? You could, you're wrestling, you're with us. What can we do? I said, well, these are the people who are running it, and it's just a matter of them hiring me. And of course, you get the let me see what I could do about it as like as a cordial. Let me see if I could help you. If they did help me or did get me in, I'm sure it wouldn't have been to the extent where they wanted a piece. They probably wanted tickets, or hey, we did you a favor. You know, can you help us? Probably on that extent, money wouldn't have been the issue. But being that I used to, if somebody needed a favor, somebody needed something done, I'm sure it would have been the same um, reciprocation that I probably would have performed. So probably in that sense, that's how that worked for me.
Because we know that extortion is the name of the game. We know that, and some people don't want to call it extortion. They'll just say, "Hey, they did me a favor, so now I'm doing them. If this is how I'm repaying them, what have you." But it's extortion. Somebody's got their hand in your pocket, taking a cut off the top. You feel like you're indebted to them. On the flip side, though, just like if you owned a business in the neighborhood and you gotta pay your dues, so to speak, and the collections guy comes around. The whole point of that is, in return for paying, for kicking it up, you're supposed to have protection. If you run into any problems, you should be able to call that outfit. You should be able to call those folks and say, "Hey, I got a problem." And then they're supposed to figure out a solution for you. So it's interesting that you, as an entertainer, um, no one ever treated you that way. It makes me wonder, what is it about Big Vito LoGrasso that people let you go and didn't stand in your way and didn't try to take advantage of you and what have you, because they could have done it. Yeah, you're one guy. Yeah, you're a crazy guy if you have to be. Yeah, you'll go all the way, but you're just one guy. And you're talking about a whole family, a whole lifestyle, a whole organized organization. So why did you, as this one guy, be allowed to basically walk away scot free the way that you have? Do you ever wonder about that?
Well, it's probably for how you handled yourself and who you were connected with, or what families you ran with. Now, I'm going to probably tell you this because I don't think I ever told you this, but I was approached in Gleason's gym to become a boxer when I was wrestling. And this was 2 years in, and they didn't have any white heavyweights. So this was when Tyson was running around and destroying people. They said, Vito, we want you to become a boxer. It was one of the trainers and one of the connected guys down there. He said, Vito, we'll get you a job. We'll get you $400 or $500 a week. We'll pay for your training, and you know we'll uh, we'll work this out basically. So I knew what it was, and I did have the opportunity to go that route to be a boxer, or how would you say, a kept man, or somebody who's you know taken care of. But I would have had to kick back, and I would have been owned. I went home, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? This is, I don't want to be owned by nobody. And I like wrestling, and the opportunity to actually box and make it, with fights, arrangements, and my path to get to where I needed to get. It was a good opportunity, but it's something I didn't want. I didn't want for myself because I wasn't that guy, and I didn't want to be owned by anybody. I'm my own man, you know?
You're your own man. That's one thing that we've learned through the years about you, no question about it. And it's fascinating that these key decisions at different points in your life you make or that you made helped you get away and probably saved your life. You know, that's the
You're right.
interesting part about it. Because a guy like you, again, who's willing to go all the way, you like to knuckle up and stuff like that. These guys these days, they don't know how to fight. There was a turning point once we got past 95, 96 as a society where guys didn't fight anymore. They would just shoot you or stab you up or whatever. They weren't going to fight you because they didn't know how to fight. And it was, even to this day, thank God for MMA and how big it is now because people are starting to get back into actually fighting and settling it with fists because I would say, roughly right around 95, probably till about 2018, 2019, fighting just wasn't the thing anymore for a lot of these guys. So I got to imagine a guy like you, traditional, who'd rather settle it to knuckle up, you would have had some hard times, brother, because people know they can't beat you, so they would have to go another way. These decisions that you made
Uh,
to get away from this stuff saved your life. And I find that really fascinating to hear you talk about your life and understanding this fact. You were right there when it was as hot as it could be. Family members were getting dropped, and other people who you knew were getting dropped, and things were happening. You got the feds on everybody's back. So much was happening, and you chose to go into pro wrestling, and then you literally left. You went all over the world, Thailand and Germany and Japan and everywhere. You got the hell away from it all. You were so far away from back home, it wasn't even funny. Traveled the world many times over. And that's the reason why you're here today. Amazing. Amazing stuff. There is a figure who you're related to who legitimately is probably, if he's not the biggest figure in American mafia history, then he's definitely top three. A guy by the name of Lucky Luciano. And you've made it clear, there's no question about it. This is somebody who is a part of your family. You're related to him. There's been many books written about him. There's been many portrayals in movies and TV shows and things like that. But to hear directly from somebody who is part of this guy's family is a whole other level of something. And over the next couple of episodes, we're going to be digging into some of these portrayals about Lucky and what the true history is. So for everybody listening out there, if you haven't seen the show Boardwalk Empire, which is, it's an HBO show. What we know is HBO Max today. So if you have HBO Max, definitely catch up on Boardwalk Empire, because Lucky Luciano is a very important key figure in that show. And there's a lot of layers to how he is portrayed in that show. And from a historical standpoint, there are some accuracies there. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see the origins of Lucky Luciano in terms of building the American Mafia as we know it today. A lot of things that he did really set it to a point where it could survive even to this day. Still going on. Billions of dollars are going through American mobs. Lucky Luciano is one of the key figures there. So without going too deep, Vito, because I know we're going to be touching upon this in future episodes, but from a general standpoint, how do you feel about the way Lucky has been portrayed, especially in Boardwalk Empire, from a general standpoint?
He's portrayed as a very blunt, aggressive, street knowledgeable individual who knows his business, willing to take calculated risks, be a smart businessman and entrepreneur, but somebody who doesn't take shit from nobody and will get up and fight on the drop of a dime. And when I watch that and I think of myself, I'm saying it is uncanny, because I would be the same way. I used to be the same exact way. And it's scary, because not only do I look like him and acting the way he's portrayed back then, it's the comparison is unreal.
Once again, folks, if you haven't already, check out Boardwalk Empire, because definitely next episode and probably episode after, we're going to be talking about how Lucky Luciano was portrayed. We're going to get into specifics, especially from a historical standpoint. Vito is going to share his take, especially from a general standpoint, what the family had said through the years about Lucky. So it'll be an interesting, informative ride that you've never heard anywhere else before. That is what you're going to get on the Friend of Ours podcast. You better believe it. Until then, though, Vito, what's the best way people can keep up with you?
Yep, let's get with X. Let's get with YouTube, Instagram, and let's get with the Big Vito brand. Guys, subscribe, join us, follow us. Get with Magic T Spiller, Noel Harlow on X. Follow us. We appreciate all the support. If you go into Facebook, it's the Big Vito brand. Just keep saying the Big Vito brand. If you want to check out our website, it's bigvito.com. If you're looking to book me, go to bigvito.com or get in touch with Duke or myself directly. We have emails, we have Messenger, we have everything. Let's bring the Don to your hometown.
As always, folks, Duke Loves Rasslin on Facebook, on Twitter, DukeLovesRasslin@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you think. Give us the birthday shout-outs, the whole 9 yards. Any questions for the Don here, Big Vito, always welcome. And that does it for 2024. So, Vito, do you have any last parting words as we end the year 2024 and we go into 2025, the greatest year that we will ever have up to this point? Any last parting words for our listeners there?
I just want to say I hope everybody has a safe holiday. Enjoy your New Year's. Spend time with your family. Always look to make a step forward in the next year. Put something on your bucket list. Just give something you want to accomplish. It doesn't have to be the greatest or hardest thing, but if it's small and your accomplishment, you already took a step forward. Always show up. Duke, that's my words of wisdom for today.
A friend of ours, he'll stand up tall. Through gunfire smoke, he'll never fall. With heart of gold and steel resolve, a mystery we'll never solve. A mystery